Imagine standing guard on the walls of your city. The night is silent, but everyone is tense. The stories you've heard are worse than war itself. Whole towns wiped out, people vanishing without mercy, forests filled not with trees, but with bodies. And the man responsible is on his way. Vlad Dracula, the man they will later call Vlad the Impaler. You know what he does to those who resist. You have seen the refugees arriving with hollow eyes, struggling to speak of what they escaped. And now he is outside your gates. Your commander decides the only way to survive is to surrender. Vlad sends a message promising safety. He swears on his honor that not a single drop of your blood will be spilled. You lower the gate. You lay down your weapons. And then you learn what that promise truly means. Because Vlad always keeps his word, just not in the way you expected. Soon you and everyone around you are chained and marched outside the city. No blades, no arrows. Instead, sharpened stakes wait in the ground. Vlad's men raise you above them, and the promise still holds. Not a drop of blood spilled. Yet the suffering is beyond imagination. Before understanding what Vlad Dracula did to strike fear into kingdoms across Europe, you need to know who he truly was. Because he was not only a warlord, not only a violent ruler who used terror as a weapon, but also a prince trained in politics, languages, and military strategy from childhood. He was born in 1431 in Wallachia, in what is now Romania. His father was known as Vlad Dracula, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly group sworn to defend Christian Europe against the expanding Ottoman Empire. That is where the family name came from. Dracula meant dragon, and his son became known as Dracula, the son of the dragon. When he was young, he and his brother were sent as political hostages to the Ottoman court. They were treated well, given education, and exposed to military training. But Vlad never forgot that he was a prisoner, surrounded by enemies. Many historians believe this period shaped him deeply. He learned how power worked, and how fear could control men more strongly than armies. Eventually he returned to Wallachia and claimed the throne. But the country was surrounded by enemies. Foreign powers wanted to control it. Local nobles plotted against him, and rival rulers challenged his authority. Most rulers would have tried to negotiate or compromise. Vlad chose another path. He decided that the only way to survive was to rule through absolute terror. He believed fear kept men loyal. He believed that a single brutal act, delivered publicly and without mercy, could prevent 100 future rebellions. And unlike other rulers who simply punished criminals or executed traitors, Vlad wanted his punishments to be remembered, talked about, and feared. He did not hide his actions. He displayed them where everyone could see them, from peasants to nobles, from travelers to foreign ambassadors. Historians would later describe him as cold, intelligent, and calculating. His violence was not random. Everything had a purpose. While other leaders wanted obedient subjects, Vlad wanted terrified subjects who would not even dare think of betraying him. And in this philosophy, he found a weapon more powerful than armies, treaties, or walls. He found fear. Vlad's most famous and horrifying method of punishment was impalement. It was not something he invented, but he used it far more than any ruler of his time. To him it was the perfect tool because it caused slow, agonizing death while making a powerful example to anyone who watched. The person to be executed would be tied, and a long wooden stake, sharpened to a point but slightly rounded at the tip, was forced through the body. The point was not meant to pierce vital organs immediately. It entered low and was angled upward, so the victim remained alive for hours or even days. This made the punishment unforgettable for those who witnessed it. Vlad's soldiers would lift the victim upright and leave them displayed along roads, around cities, and outside castles as warnings. Travelers, merchants, messengers, and soldiers coming from other lands would suddenly find themselves passing through rows of suffering people, their faces twisted in silent screams. The message was clear: disobey Vlad, and this is your fate. Stories of these forests of corpses spread rapidly. Chronicles from Europe wrote of travelers who became sick just from the sight and smell of the dead. Some ambassadors who had to speak with Vlad reported that he held meetings surrounded by the impaled, eating meals calmly while listening to the moans of the dying. Whether every detail is true or exaggerated, the world believed them, and that belief alone strengthened Vlad's power. His reputation traveled faster than any army. Villages surrendered before a single one of his soldiers arrived, terrified that resistance would mean they ended up in the same place as the countless victims now lining the roads. Vlad understood something few others grasped at the time. Men are more frightened of suffering than death. He used that knowledge to control whole regions with fewer troops than many larger kingdoms. And in doing so, he created a legend that would haunt Europe long after he was gone. One of the events that truly shocked the world was Vlad's ruthless campaign against the boyars, the powerful noble families of Wallachia. These nobles had a long history of betraying rulers, switching sides whenever it benefited them. Many had helped overthrow or murder previous princes, including members of Vlad's own family. When Vlad gained the throne, he decided that this pattern would end forever. Instead of working with the nobles or trying to win their loyalty, he invited them to an enormous feast at his palace. The gathering was grand, with music, food, and fine wine. Many of the boyars believed this was a new beginning, a chance to gain favor with their new ruler. They did not understand that Vlad had already judged them guilty in his mind. Partway through the celebration, he suddenly gave orders to seize every noble present. Some were old, others young, some innocent, others guilty of countless betrayals. Vlad did not care. He sent the strongest and youngest on a brutal forced march to one of his mountain fortresses, where they were made to work until many collapsed and died. The older nobles and those he considered the most dangerous suffered a different fate. Many of them were impaled on the spot, their screams echoing across the palace grounds. Vlad believed this action would wipe out the power of the disloyal noble class and send a message that treachery would never again be tolerated for many rulers. This would have been a shocking overreaction. For Vlad, it was only the beginning. By removing the nobles, he took control of the land, wealth, and political system without opposition. Foreign observers who later wrote about him described this moment as one of the major reasons. His own people feared him as much as their enemies did. But Vlad believed that a country divided by internal enemies could never defend itself from outside threats, and the Ottoman Empire was growing more powerful every year. If he wanted Wallachia to survive, he believed it had to be united behind him, even if that unity was created through terror, and for the moment, it worked. The nobles who survived dared not plot against him again. Vlad also became infamous for the horrifying revenge he took on invading armies. When the Ottoman Empire sent forces into Wallachia to punish him for refusing to pay tribute, he knew he could not match their numbers in open battle. Instead, he used fear and psychological warfare. As the Sultan's troops marched deeper into his territory, they expected to find villages to occupy and food to seize. Instead, they found ruins, burnt homes, empty fields, and silence. Vlad ordered everything of value removed or destroyed, so the invaders could not survive off the land. Wells were poisoned, crops burned, animals hidden or killed. The advancing soldiers soon grew tired, sick, and hungry. But worse was waiting ahead. At one point, they came across a scene that froze them in place. Thousands of Ottoman prisoners and local traitors had been impaled in a massive field stretching as far as the eye could see. The air was thick with the smell of blood and decay. Birds circled above, feeding on the dead. Some victims were still alive, begging for death. The Ottoman soldiers were horrified. Chroniclers later wrote that the Sultan himself was shaken when he saw the grim display. Vlad had turned the landscape into a living nightmare, and the invading army understood the message. This was a ruler who would destroy everything, even his own land. Rather than surrender, the Ottomans were not used to such brutality. Their morale collapsed, and many soldiers began to fear that they had entered the territory of a monster rather than a man. This battlefield of the impaled did more damage to enemy resolve than any army could have. While the Ottomans did continue their campaign, they advanced slowly and with growing fear. Vlad retreated deeper into his forests, using night attacks and ambushes to kill smaller groups and vanish before dawn. The fear he created began to work more effectively than any fortress. Armies fight when they believe survival is possible. Vlad made sure the invading soldiers felt surrounded by death at every step, and this psychological pressure changed the entire course of the war. The Ottomans turned back sooner than expected, shaken not by defeat in battle, but by the knowledge that their enemy fought in ways no one else dared. Vlad's terror did not only target armies or traitorous nobles. He also aimed his punishments at criminals, thieves, and anyone he believed threatened order in his lands. Before his reign, Wallachia was filled with corruption and lawlessness. Travelers were robbed on the roads, merchants had to pay bribes to pass safely, and many peasants lived in fear of bandits more than foreign invaders. Vlad decided that the only way to fix this was to create a society where crime was nearly impossible to commit without facing consequences that everyone dreaded. He believed that fear was stronger than guards or laws. So he did not just punish criminals, he made examples of them, where the entire population could witness what happened to lawbreakers. There is a famous story that shows how far he took this idea. Vlad placed a golden cup at a public fountain in the center of a town. It was a beautiful and valuable object, left out in the open for everyone to see. Anyone could drink from it, but no one was allowed to steal it. And despite its worth, the cup remained untouched the entire time Vlad ruled. No guard was posted, no walls protected it, but the people were too terrified even to think of taking it. Because everyone had already seen what happened to thieves, they were impaled in the town square, and their bodies were left on display as a warning. There were also stories of travelers who could walk through Vlad's lands with gold in their pockets and sleep on the roadside without fear of being robbed. Foreign merchants wrote in letters and diaries that they had never visited a place where law was so absolute and enforced so brutally. But this iron control came at a terrible cost. Innocent people were sometimes executed because Vlad believed that a single mistake was better than letting one threat go unpunished. Rumors spread that he had spies in every village, listening for whispers of rebellion or crime. Whether this was true or not, people believed it, and that paranoia made his rule even stronger. To modern readers, such methods seem extreme and cruel. But in his time, many rulers faced constant instability and rebellion. Vlad believed that mercy only encouraged more disorder. He preferred a system where people behaved out of fear rather than loyalty, and the results were undeniable. During his rule, Wallachia became safer for ordinary citizens than it had been in generations. Even his enemies reluctantly admitted that no one dared commit crimes while Vlad was on the throne. But the peace he created was built on suffering, and the memory of those punishments would stay in the minds of future generations. Long after his reign ended, one of the darkest stories told about Vlad involved his chilling sense of poetic justice, where he punished people in ways that matched the crime he believed they committed. His goal was not only to kill, but to make the punishment symbolic so everyone understood the lesson. One famous example involved a group of foreign merchants who traveled into his territory. These traders were accused of cheating locals, manipulating prices, and lying about their profits. Many rulers at that time fined dishonest merchants or banned them from trading. Vlad had another approach. He ordered them impaled and displayed publicly so that every passerby could see what happened to those who tried to take advantage of his people. There was another story of a noble woman who complained that her clothes were not embroidered finely enough. Instead of arguing or ignoring her, Vlad reportedly ordered her clothing to be improved by having her skin removed and displayed as a warning to others who lived in comfort while common people suffered. Historians debate whether every detail of these stories is true, but even rumors of them spread quickly, and the effect was the same. People learned that Vlad did not tolerate selfishness, disloyalty, or disrespect. Every mistake had a price, and that price was horrifying. Another tale involved families who were lazy or irresponsible. Vlad believed that every citizen had a duty to work and contribute to the community. So when he found people who refused to labor or lived off others, he gathered them into barns or halls. Then he gave a speech about how society could only survive if everyone did their part. When the speech ended, the building was set on fire, and no one inside escaped. To Vlad, this was the ultimate lesson in his realm. There was no place for people who did not serve the greater good. His idea of justice was absolute, harsh, and often without mercy. These stories shocked foreign writers, ambassadors, and enemy rulers. They wrote about him as if he were not human but a creature of pure cruelty. Yet some local peasants saw him differently. They lived in villages that were now safe from bandits and corrupt nobles. Their harvests were not stolen by soldiers or raiders. Their children could walk the roads without fear. So in some regions, Vlad became not only feared but respected. The world around him was violent and unstable, and many believed that only a man willing to be more terrifying than the enemy could protect them. Whether hero or monster, Vlad made sure that everyone who lived under his rule understood one thing: justice in Wallachia did not come from mercy but from fear. As Vlad's legend spread, his enemies worked just as hard to destroy his name as he worked to frighten them. Foreign rulers, especially in Germany and the Ottoman Empire, printed books and reports describing him as a monster who drank blood, enjoyed torture, and killed for pleasure. These stories traveled across Europe faster than any official record. Some were true, others exaggerated, and many were invented to turn public opinion against him. At a time when printing presses were new, stories about Vlad became some of the first mass-produced horror tales in history. People who had never seen Wallachia read about forests of impaled corpses, burning buildings filled with screaming victims, and a ruler who preferred brutality over diplomacy. Over time, these stories turned Vlad into a figure far larger than life, feared even by those who had never heard his real history. Yet, while many foreign writings painted him as a heartless killer, records from Wallachia showed a different side. Some peasants remembered him as the only ruler who protected them from corrupt nobles and greedy invaders. Others wrote that he was strict but fair, and that the roads were never safer than under his rule. Travelers said that a man could walk across the country with gold in one hand and not be robbed. To common villagers living in an age of chaos, that stability meant everything. Vlad ruled with iron, but he also used that iron to shield his people against forces far greater than themselves. His reign eventually came to an end after years of war, betrayal, and shifting alliances. He was captured more than once, imprisoned, freed, and returned to power before finally being killed in battle. His body was reportedly decapitated and sent to the Sultan as proof that the dreaded enemy of the Ottoman Empire was truly dead. But if his life ended on a field of blood, his legend only grew stronger afterward. His enemies kept spreading tales of his cruelty, while his supporters spoke of his strength. Over the centuries, his frightening reputation mixed with myth, and eventually writers connected his name to new stories of supernatural evil. That is how Vlad Dracula became linked to the character of Count Dracula, the vampire who lives in darkness and drinks the blood of the living. It was a transformation from man to myth, from ruler to nightmare. Today, historians still debate who Vlad truly was. Was he a sadistic tyrant who killed for power and pleasure, or a harsh leader shaped by the violence of his time? Using terror as the only weapon left to protect his land, the truth likely lies somewhere in between. What cannot be denied is that he understood human fear better than almost any ruler in history. He turned that fear into a battlefield, into a weapon, into a message written not in ink but in blood. And centuries later, the world still remembers his name not as a king, but as a legend that terrified Europe and helped create one of the most enduring monsters in literature.